everybody, this is Jessica here from Double the Stitches, and I'm going to get you started on knitting the Asana Cowl for part of our Bright Friday knit along. I am so thrilled to be part of this fun event hosted by Erin of Crafty Housewife Yarns, and the yarn is from Galler Yarns, and this is their Asana yarn. It has the texture of a thick and thin yarn, a hand spun yarn, but not at the effort. So if you want something beautiful like this that's done for you, this is the perfect yarn. Okay, so we're going to get started. First, I'm going to go over some of the tools that we're going to use. So we need the yarn, obviously. We're going to knit in the round, and we're going to use circular knitting needles to do that. You're also going to want to have a darning needle or a sewing needle. This is by far my favorite type. It has a nice large opening for the eye to get your yarn through there. And it has this little bent tip. Do you see how that points up? That makes it so easy to grab the threads as you are weaving in your ends. It also, if on a different project, if you were seaming some pieces together, it's really fabulous for that. And you'll also need a stitch marker just to indicate the beginning or the end of your round as you're working in the round on your circular needles. Okay friends, let's get started. So we've got our yarn wound into to a ball, or if it's wound into a cake. My preference is to work from the strand that is the outside of the cake, not from the center pull, and I'll tell you exactly why that is. As you work from the outside, your cake just gets smaller, and this is what's left over after from 2 skeins of the Asana yarn after knitting the cowl and the hat. So I definitely did not feel like I was playing yarn chicken, as I like to call it, at all. Plenty of yarn there left over. So when you work from the outside, your cake just gets smaller. If you work from the inside, from the center pull, it gets hollow. And what happens, because you're just pulling out the middle, is that you end up with this hollow cake that sometimes will collapse in on itself, and then you end up with a giant tangled mess, and nobody likes that. The other benefit to working from the outside of a cake is that it's much easier to get a feeling for how much yarn you have left. So as your cake gets smaller, you get a real sense of, what's remaining, as compared to a hollow shell of a cake makes it much harder to know what's really there. So you get a nice start that way. We're going to start with the long tail cast on. So the pattern calls for casting on 100 stitches. And my favorite way to estimate the amount of yarn that you need is to wrap it around the needle and then give yourself a buffer, give yourself some extra. So every time that you wrap the yarn around is approximately the amount of yarn that you would need for each stitch. So here I've wrapped it around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So that's approximately how much yarn you would need for 7. I'm just going to keep going. Okay, so I wrapped it around the needle 25 times. Now you want to pinch the yarn and you can take it off that needle. The reason that I did 25 times in this case is because since it calls for 100, you can, in theory, it generally works out from where you pinched it, double the yarn, and that should be approximately 50, the yarn needed for 50 stitches. Now you can again bring that over. That would be 75. And one last time. And that should be approximately for the yarn that you need for a long tail cast on for your 100 stitches. Now you have to make sure you want to leave yourself a little bit of extra, and also some for your tail at the end. I've got the tail on my left and the ball of yarn on my right, and I've counted off how much yarn I need to do the cast on. Left a little bit of room for an extra tail to secure at the end of the project, and we're going to make a slip knot. This is my favorite way to teach, and we're going to take the yarn and it goes over 2 fingers on my left hand. We're going to come back around to make an X. I'm going to take my thumb and put it over the X, and I'm going to turn my fingers over. From there, I'm going to take the front strand, and that comes back towards my knuckles, and the strand that was in the back, now it's in the front, that comes towards my fingers and off. And that gives you an adjustable ring, and that is a nice sturdy way to start your long tail cast on. Once you've got the slip knot done, you can then pick up your knitting needles, and to do the long tail cast on, you only need 1 needle to start with, and you put that in the ring. Tighten that up a bit. Okay, so now I'm just going to slide this here. So I like to do this with the tail away from me. The ball of yarn is closest to me. And I'm going to grab the 2 strands of yarn with my fingers. Now I'm going to take my pointer finger and my thumb and divide the 2 strands and point those up to the sky. Now it looks kind of like a slingshot if you pull it down. It also kind of resembles a heart. I'll just show you that beginning part again. So you're going to grab the 2 strands of yarn. You're going to put your pointer finger and your thumb with the knitting needle centered with the loop on it in between and pull back. So it's a little bit like a slingshot. It also resembles a heart. Now to do the long tail cast on, you're going to go up the thumb, grabbing that very front strand of yarn. You're going over to the back strand of yarn to grab that with the tip of your needle, and through the loop that's on your thumb. So you're going back out the way you came, drop it off your thumb, and use that thumb now to tighten it a little bit. You want to be gentle. You don't want it to be too snug. It should be able to easily slide on your needles. So now again, I can put my pointer and my thumb to divide the strands of yarn, pull back like a slingshot, come towards you to the front strand of yarn, go up your thumb, over to the back strand, and pull that back strand through the loop on your thumb and off. Now for each one of these loops is a stitch that you've casted on. This is 3. So we're going to go up the thumb, around to the back, and through the loop. Tighten. Up, over, and through. Up, over, and through. Now I know that this thick and thin yarn in this case may be a little bit concerning or worrisome to people who haven't knit with it before, but really what I want to tell you is it's a beautiful yarn. It gives you beautiful texture as you knit, and just disregard the thickness. The thickness changes. Just knit it. You'll be thrilled with the way that it comes out. Don't try to work tighter or looser as you go. The yarn will kind of fill in the spaces, and you'll have all this gorgeous texture without so much work. So again, from starting position, we grab with the bottom 3 fingers. We use the pointer and the thumb to divide the strands, and the knitting needle is centered. Fingers pointing up towards the sky. Pull forward all the way towards you to the base of your thumb. Go up, over, and through. Tighten. Up, over and through. Okay, so that's the long tail cast on. And here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches cast on. Now I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to undo this and I'm going to show you another way to cast on. If you're having trouble with this method, you may like the next one too. And now I'm going to show you how to do a knitted cast on. In order to complete this cast on, you do not need to measure your yarn in advance because of the way that this is worked. You just want to start with leaving yourself a tail, and you want to give yourself a nice long tail. A good 6 or 8 inches is perfect. From there, you're going to make your slip knot. So you're going to put the yarn over your 2 fingers, come back up towards you to make an X, put your thumb over the X, turn your fingers over, the front strand goes to your knuckles, and the other strand comes through, and that gives you this nice adjustable ring. It's a nice sturdy start for your cast on. And you're going to put your needle into the adjustable ring and snug it up a bit. Again, you do not want to make this too tight. You want to be able to easily slide it on your needle. Now we're going to actually use both needles to make this cast on. In order to do this, you're going to take your right needle, you're going to put it into the stitch, just like that. You're going to take the yarn and you're going to wrap it around the back needle and between the needles. Use the tip of the needle to pull it through the stitch. Rotate your needles so that they are parallel to each other and slide that loop onto your needle. Let's do it again. Put your right needle into the stitch. Wrap the yarn around the needle and between them. Use the tip of your right needle to pull the loop through the stitch. Rotate your needles so that they are parallel and slide that stitch onto your needle. So now I've got my first 3 stitches casted on. I'll show you again. The right needle goes into the stitch. Wrap your yarn around your needle. Pull it through the stitch. Rotate your needle and slide that stitch right onto your needle. Okay, now you've got your stitches casted on.